Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Map Talk webinar. Today, we are going to talk about Tucson's house prices. Now, my name is George Hammond. I'm the director of the Economic and Business Research Center, and I'm joined today by Jennifer Pullen, our Map Dashboard Coordinator and Senior Research Economist. So let's start off by talking about the webinar details. Now, the Map Talk will be recorded, and we'll have the recording up later this afternoon or early tomorrow. The webinar will be conducted in conference mode, and that means that everyone except the presenters will be muted. You can ask a question anytime by sending an email to me at ghammond@email.arizona.edu. Let's start off by talking about our sustaining sponsors and partners. Our sustaining sponsors are Tucson Electric Power, the Thomas R. Brown Foundations, the Freeport-McMoRan Foundation. Our partners are the Community Foundation for Southern Arizona, the Pima Association of Governments, the Southern Arizona Leadership Council, Sun Corridor Incorporated, and the University of Arizona. Without our sustaining sponsors and partners, the Map Dashboard would not be possible. Also keep in mind that the Map Dashboard is featured twice a month in the Arizona Daily Star. On the last Sunday of the month, you'll find a feature on the front page of the business section, and on the first Monday of the month, you'll find the map on the health section. So be sure to subscribe to the Arizona Daily Star and check those out. Now, in addition to the core data sets and analyses on the map, you'll also find a large number of feature articles. And these feature articles are written by the MAP team and also by University of Arizona faculty. And these cover a wide range of topics, ranging from housing affordability in Tucson to understanding chronic disease incidence to the potential for water independence in Tucson's communities. We also have a really neat feature on how local organizations use the map. And we'd love to hear from your organization about how you're using the map to improve decision making. Of course, these days, we're spending a lot of time and attention on understanding the economic impact of the COVID-19 outbreak. So come back often. There will be much more analysis on that score in coming weeks and months. We'd also really like it if you would engage with us. And you can do that in a couple of ways. First, you can subscribe to our monthly newsletter. Click on the subscribe for updates button and sign up there. We'll send you a newsletter with the latest developments on the map about once a month, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. You can also ask a question at any time by clicking on the Ask a Researcher button, and we'll be happy to help you understand better the data and analysis that we feature on the map. And with that by way of introduction, I'm now going to turn the presentation over to Jennifer Pullen, our excellent Map Dashboard Coordinator and Senior Research Economist, and she will talk to you about Tucson home prices. Jennifer, take it away.
Thanks, George. We're going to start off today talking about what prices currently are and how they compare to our peer metropolitan areas. Then we're going to look at growth in home prices since the last downturn. Essentially, what we've seen is that prices have grown at a modest rate since 2011 when compared to our peers. Next, we'll explore where Tucson's home prices are compared to pre-2008 recession prices. And then we'll talk about what all of this means for housing affordability in the Tucson region. And then finally, we'll discuss what's been weighing on many of our minds, and that's how the COVID-19 pandemic will impact Tucson's economy. Today, we're going to focus specifically on home prices, but if you're interested in a more general discussion of the economy, George gave a great overview earlier this month. You can find that recorded webinar posted on the MAP website. We will also have an updated discussion in the next month or two as more data becomes available. It's important to remember as we talk about COVID-19's impact on prices today that Tucson's economy was strong prior to the pandemic. In fact, in 2019, Tucson's economy added jobs at the fastest pace in more than a decade. And we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. Let's start with just the general median home price in Tucson for single family homes, what that looks like in 2019 compared to other pure metropolitan areas. And then we'll look at the trend over time. So here you can see one of our signature fuel gauges. It shows where Tucson is relative to other pure metropolitan areas, places like Phoenix and Las Vegas, Colorado Springs. All of these places are similar to Tucson in some way. They have a similar population, a similar demographic mix, a large research university, or military installation. So here you can see Tucson's price at $238,900 for the median single family home in Tucson in 2019 was relatively low compared to some of our pure metropolitan areas. You see Denver here at the bottom of the gauge at $462,000. San Diego is so high here at $650,000. We can't fit it on this fuel gauge without scrunching all of these metropolitan areas together over to the left. So Tucson's relatively low in terms of what we pay for our single family homes, a little bit behind the US here. And you see this outer ring, Tucson's prices increased. In 2018, the price for a single family home, the median price was $223,000, and that increased by 7.1% from 2018 to 2019. And this price here in 2019, $238,900, was a 12-year high. So let's look at that trend information. So here we have Tucson graph next to the US, and so we can look at how the trend patterns follow each other. Tucson's denoted in orange here, the US in green. So we see Tucson's home price fluctuations have followed the same general pattern as the US. So what we see is that home prices nationally and in Tucson began a rapid rise here beginning in about 2004. This was the housing boom, the pre-2008 recession. Something that's important to note is that Tucson increased much more rapidly than the US between 2004, 2005, 2006. So increases in prices much faster than what we saw in the US here, a little bit slower growth for the US, but during the 2008 recession, Tucson saw a much steeper decline than the US did. So this peak here, peak price in 2006 to bottomed out price here in 2011, peak to trough, Tucson saw a 45.1% decrease in the median home price. So prices just below $250,000 in 2006, falling all the way down to about $135,000 for that median price in 2011. Since 2011 here, we've seen prices increasing at a fairly solid rate for both Tucson and the nation year over year. So let's take a look at this next, this since 2011 in a little bit more detail. So the first thing we notice here is between 2011 to 2013, prices increased rapidly. There was a quick rise in prices, a quick adjustment from that bottomed out price in 2011. This represented about 12% year over year. So 12% growth in median home prices between 2011 and 2012, and then again 12% between 2012 and 2013. We then saw prices stabilize at about a 4% growth rate between 2013 and 2016. And then again in 2017, we saw growth accelerate. So this was about here, this is about a 10% growth rate, followed by 6%. And then last year, we saw a 7.1% growth. So how does this compare to our peers? Well, last year, growth was pretty rapid compared to our peers, and we'll see that in a moment. But overall, the average annual growth from 2011 to 2019, so that year over year growth averaged out is 7.5%, as you can see here in the last bullet. That has been solid growth for Tucson, but it kind of falls in the middle of our pure metropolitan area. So it's strong growth, but it's not excessive growth when we're comparing to our other pure metropolitan areas. So just a quick recap, since the 2008-2009 recession, we saw a rapid adjustment of prices there beginning in 2011, followed by a little bit of stabilization near 4% between 2013 and 2016, and then again prices began to accelerate through 2017 and 18 and 19. So here is how the growth rate compared in 2019. So Tucson's growth rate we saw in the fuel gauge, that increase between 2018 and 2019 was 7.1%. That was the second fastest growth when compared to our peer metropolitan areas. So we see Albuquerque here, it grew at 9.4%, the US at just under 5%, and San Diego grew only at 1.7%, or median home price grew at 1.7%. So Tucson's growth last year in 2019 was rapid, but when we average that out since 2011, and we look at that 7.5% year-over-year growth between the last 8 years, that falls in the middle of our peer metropolitan areas. So it's going to fall down somewhere down here by the US when we rank out all of those different metropolitan areas. And so solid growth, but really right in line with our peers, so not excessively fast. So in fact, Tucson's one of only 2 peer metropolitan areas that have yet to reach their 2006 pre-recession price. So this graph is a little complicated. I'll walk you through it. So here we have our price in 2006. So we looked at what was the price for each metropolitan area in 2006. So that's that peak price prior to the 2008 recession. And that is denoted by these blue bars. So here, for example, in the US, you can see that the pre-recession price was around $220,000. It was exactly $221,900. That's denoted by the top of this blue bar. Then you can see we have these green bars, and this is the amount above the 2006 price, or what the price was in 2019. So this green bar represents how much each MSA's median home prices increased above their 2006 pre-recession price. So in the US, this green bar represents an increase of $52,700. In 2019, the US median home price was $274,600. That means that the nationally, the median home price has increased by $52,700 since its peak price in 2006. And so that's occurred for almost all of the metropolitan areas that we compare Tucson to, with the exception of Las Vegas and Tucson. What these orange bars represent is how much below these metropolitan areas are from that 2006 peak price. So here, Tucson is $6,000 below what our peak price in 2006 was. So 2006, the median home price in Tucson was $244,900, and in 2019 that was $6,000 less at $238,900. So Tucson's median home price needs to increase by 2.5% to reach its pre-recession price. So we're almost there, but not quite. It's important to note that home prices in Tucson were hit harder by the 2008 downturn than many of its peers. We looked at that trend graph and we saw that peak to trough decline of 45.1%. Only Las Vegas and Phoenix posted larger declines. Las Vegas is one of those metros that has not yet reached its peak 2006 price, and Phoenix only just recently reached it and is slightly over. So they saw declines in the low 50% range. And there are some cases like Austin that actually home prices remained flat during the last downturn, and they really saw no decline in their price. So those regions tend to have increased by quite a bit since over their 2006 price. So what does all of this mean for housing affordability? We've seen year-over-year average annual growth of 7.5% for the Tucson metropolitan area. So this is going to impact housing affordability. So in 2018, we saw that Tucson was the second most affordable place to buy a single family home for someone earning the local median family income when compared to other peer metropolitan areas. So here, 66.2% of recently sold homes were considered affordable. This was down from 71.1% in 2017. We expect the percentage of affordable homes to decline further in 2019, as we know that home prices rose faster than wages did in 2019. So for reference, we saw a 7.1% increase in home prices in 2019, and wages increased by 4%. So home prices are increasing at a much faster rate than wages are, at least in 2019. So what happens is housing affordability is essentially made up of income and price. So as price increases faster than income, we see declines in housing affordability. We'll also likely see further declines in 2020 as social distancing measures due to the COVID-19 pandemic have reduced wages for many and increased those that are unemployed. And so far through the first quarter to the end of March, we've seen home prices fairly stable in the Tucson metropolitan area. So we have seen we're seeing a reduction in wages and an increase in unemployment, which is likely to continue to cause housing affordability to decline. Though we'll have to wait and see what the rest of the data in 2020 looks like to make a definitive, to have a definitive answer on 2020. Another way that we can get a good understanding of how affordable a region is to look at housing cost burden. Housing cost burden is the percentage of households that pay more than 30% of their income in housing costs, including their mortgage, rent, taxes, insurance, and utilities. In Tucson, we find that 33% of our households are considered housing cost burden. So we can look at this by tenure, so we can compare homeowners to renters. And in Tucson and nationally, we find that renters are far more likely to be housing cost burden than homeowners. So here in 2018, 22.4% of homeowners were housing cost burden, but a whopping 51.8% of renters were, more than double. And we find that this holds for the state, for the nation, and for all the other metropolitan areas that we compare Tucson to. So we're currently working on a feature article that's going to explore this data in a little bit more detail. So stay tuned for that. I anticipate it will come out sometime in the early summer. We'll really dig into why renters tend to have a higher housing cost burden than homeowners do. And then, as one would expect, those households that fall in the lower income brackets have a higher percentage of those who are considered housing cost burden. So in Tucson, of the households at 33% that are housing cost burden, nearly 75% of them fall into income brackets earning less than $35,000. So, as with housing affordability, one would expect as we move through 2020 that the percentage of households that are housing cost burden will also increase due to the increasing unemployment rate and reduction in wages. So now is a good time to talk about what the impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic might be on housing. There's a lot of uncertainty out there on what will happen to prices in the short term, but there's a few things that we do know. The first thing we know is that interest rates are at record lows. There's been a significant reduction in inventory. This is because sellers are pulling back. They're not listing their houses, but we've also seen a pullback of buyers as well. And we'll see in a moment that millennials have actually pulled back the least in terms of loan applications. So that pullback hasn't been equal across all age groups, with some interesting data from CoreLogic that shows by age cohort what that pullback in buying has looked like. And then so far, we have data through the end of March, and that has shown that prices have remained stable. And then really more time and data is needed to estimate the true impact. I think by kind of later this summer, when we start to get that second quarter data on housing prices, we'll have a much better idea of what is in store for the long run. So here's a little bit of data from the Tucson Association of Realtors. And in the month of March, there was an overall decline in new listings, but that was driven by a decline in condos and townhome listings. And so this is compared to March of 2019. So we saw in March of 2020 compared to March of 2019, new listings for single family homes increased by 1.6%, but listings for condos and townhomes decreased by 6%. Single family homes compared to 1 year ago, or the median sales price was up by 6.1% in March. Days on market had decreased by 20%, but inventory had declined by almost 31%. And that data we're seeing consistently across the nation and all of the markets is that inventory is down, and that is because of that seller pullback. Here's a little bit of data that Long Realty sent us. And I think here, really, it's just what we want to look at is this percent change post versus pre-COVID-19 weekly average. And again, this is just showing us that inventory is down. What I find interesting is that it is down significantly more for the Tucson metropolitan area than it is down for the greater Phoenix area, at least new listings. So new listings are down by almost 15% in the Tucson metropolitan area compared to 2% in the greater Phoenix area. And then this is the really interesting data that we have from CoreLogic. And this data shows the percent change in monthly home purchase applications. So those that are applying for home loans. And as I mentioned earlier, there's been a pullback in buyers, but you can see here when we break that down by age cohort, it hasn't been equal. So we've seen, compared to a year ago, there's been a significant decline in home purchase applications for basically everyone over the age of 40. So Gen Xers, baby boomers, and the silent generation. So this is, those essentially over 40 have pulled back significantly, 20 to 30% in their home loan applications since March of last year. And then millennials, though, haven't really seen that much pullback since compared to last year. And so what some are finding is that millennials may see this as a good opportunity to buy their first home or their second home at record low interest rates. Interest rates are nearing 3%. Some anticipate that they're actually going to fall to 3%. So really record low interest rates for that 30-year mortgage right now. It's, as I mentioned before, it's really important to remember that Tucson's economy was strong prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, and there's currently no reason to believe Tucson's economy won't rebound once it's safe to reduce physical distancing measures. So in 2019, Tucson posted its fastest job growth in over a decade, as illustrated here in this field gauge. We increased total non-farm employment by 1.9%. That was quite a bit faster than the US and faster than the previous year, kind of ranked in the middle of our peer metropolitan areas. So our key takeaways from today: growth in home prices are strong prior to COVID-19 pandemic. We had the second fastest growth among peers in 2019. Our average annual growth of 7.5% since 2011 was solid, but it's solid growth, but it kind of falls right there in the middle of our peer metropolitan area, so not excessively fast when compared to our peers. And then we have not yet reached our pre-2008, 2009 recession price. We are close, very close. It's possible that depending on what happens with prices in 2020, that we will reach that here in the first half of 2020. Housing affordability is going to take a hit, no doubt, in 2019 and probably in 2020 as well. We've seen an increase in prices, home prices. We've seen a reduction in wages and increased unemployment. So we would anticipate that for sure in 2019 and then probably again in 2020, we'll see a decline in the percentage of homes that are affordable in the Tucson metropolitan area. This is, of course, assuming that home prices stay stable through this time period. And then uncertainty exists around home sales. What we do know is that Tucson's prices have been stable through the end of March. We'll look at the April data here in the next week or two and see what that looks like. Inventory is low, but we're seeing both buyer and seller pull back. So though millennials are not pulling back as much as those over 40, and then again, record low interest rates. And then again, Tucson's economy was strong prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. Not only did we have that fastest employment growth in over a decade, but wages increased by 4% in 2019. That was the fastest wage growth we've seen in quite a while. GDP grew by 3.6%, and that was faster than the nation. So that's all I have as prepared remarks for you today. I think we'll ask George if anyone has emailed any questions.
Hi, Jennifer. Great job. No questions from the audience just yet. But one thing that I would like to hear is, could you describe some of the data that is on the dashboard revolving around housing cost burden for local areas like Southern Arizona communities?
Sure, thanks, George. We have several articles on housing on the MAP dashboard. We've written housing cost burden articles, like George had mentioned. We have that as a core indicator. So we have all of that data available for the US, the 10 Western states, the metropolitan areas, and the Arizona counties. In addition, we write annual reports at the community level. So we look at the 42 most populous communities in Southern Arizona, and we have housing cost burden data available for that. My colleague, Caitlin Chamorro, is currently working on that article, and we should have that housing cost burden data available, that new revised housing cost burden data available next week on the MAP dashboard. We also have additional home price articles and housing affordability articles that we've looked at that you can find in the library section of the MAP dashboard.
Great, thanks, Jennifer. We did have one question about new construction, so I'll talk about that a little bit. Yeah, that's really the big question going forward over the next couple of months, or at least one of the big questions is what will happen to new economic activity. And the thing to keep in mind is that there's a huge amount of uncertainty about how the recovery will unfold, because we don't know how the virus, the outbreak, will progress going forward. So, you know, in the long run, Arizona is going to remain a really fast-growing, dynamic economy. In the near term, you know, certainly in the second quarter and perhaps extending into the third, I think we'll see a pretty significant slowdown in construction activity. We saw housing permits drop off pretty significantly in March. We'll see what happens with the April data. I think we'll see a little bit of a pause in construction activity in the near term, but the longer term prospects for really Arizona, Phoenix, and Tucson remain very strong. Okay, well, no
George,
additional. Yeah.
there's been a few questions through chat that I'll address, and feel free to jump in if you have any thoughts on this. So there was a question on what factors will affect our ability to keep families in their homes in light of the building rent and mortgage payment defaults. So what we know right now is that a lot of lenders are offering you to defer your mortgage payments for the time being, and to add them on to the end of your mortgage. So if you have a mortgage payment, you've been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, either in losing your job or being asked to stay home without wages because you've had contact with somebody, you can apply to your mortgage lender to have your payment tacked on to the end of your mortgage, so you would not have to pay during those next 3 months. Now, I personally have not heard any anecdotal stories about whether or not that is difficult to do, or if that's something that the lenders are making relatively easy. Also, there's been the governor is not allowing evictions currently, so renters cannot be evicted from their homes if they've been impacted by the COVID-19, and there is a list of criteria that those individuals must meet to not be evicted from their homes for the time being.
Excellent. Thanks, Jennifer. I'm not seeing any additional questions on my end.
And there was another question about lenders tightening mortgage requirements, minimum credit scores, or salary requirements. I have not heard anything about lenders changing their requirements as they were previously. I still think, you have to write minimum credit scores. I think that is currently the same as it was prior, with having to show your salary and whatnot. George, have you heard anything about lenders tightening?
No, not yet, but that's something that we'll keep an eye out for going forward. Okay, well, thank you, Jennifer. And with that, please contact us if you have any questions or comments about the webinar today or about the MAP dashboard more generally. And with that, I will thank Jennifer again for an excellent presentation and webinar. And we will see all of you again soon at our upcoming webinars as part of the MAP Dashboard project. So thanks very much. Bye-bye. Have a good day.